Every second you delay, the world moves forward without you. What if one simple formula could force you into action instantly, breaking procrastination and unlocking unstoppable momentum? This audiobook reveals proven strategies used by top performers to conquer hesitation, hack your brain, and turn small steps into massive results. From rewiring your habits to using energy, accountability, and micro-commitments, every chapter gives actionable techniques you can apply today. No fluff, no excuses, just powerful, practical methods to take control of your life. Subscribe now and join thousands transforming their productivity, one instant action at a time. Chapter 1. The Science of Immediate Action. Procrastination is a silent thief that robs us of precious time, energy, and potential. It convinces us that tomorrow will be the right time to act, even though tomorrow rarely comes. But why do we procrastinate? Why do we put off tasks that we know will bring us closer to our goals? The truth is, procrastination is more than just a bad habit. It's an instinctual defense mechanism hardwired into our brains. Understanding the science behind it can give us the tools to overcome it and take immediate action. At its core, procrastination is a response to discomfort. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. When faced with a task that feels overwhelming, boring, or anxiety-inducing, the brain perceives it as a source of stress, activating the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain. This system's primary goal is to protect us from discomfort, so it creates resistance, making us want to avoid the task at all costs. This resistance is often mistaken for laziness, but it's simply the brain trying to protect us from the perceived threat of discomfort. To break free from procrastination, we need to understand the neuroscience behind it. The brain operates on a system of reward and punishment, driven by dopamine, the neurotransmitter that regulates motivation, pleasure, and reward. When we complete a task, especially one that we find enjoyable or rewarding, the brain releases dopamine, making us feel good and reinforcing the behavior. However, when a task is seen as unpleasant or stressful, the brain withholds dopamine, causing us to feel unmotivated and resistant to action. This is where the science of motivation comes into play. Motivation is not an endless magical force that we can summon at will. It's a chemical reaction in the brain, triggered by action. In other words, the more we delay a task, the more our brain resists it, and the harder it becomes to take action. On the flip side, the more we engage in the task, the more dopamine is released, and the more motivated we become. The key then is to understand that action precedes motivation, not the other way around. To hack your brain and overcome hesitation instantly, you must understand that waiting for motivation is futile. Instead, you need to create a trigger, a simple action that forces you to start, even when you don't feel like it. One of the most effective ways to do this is by utilizing a technique known as the 5-second rule. Popularized by Mel Robbins, this simple but powerful rule works by interrupting your brain's natural resistance to action. When you feel the urge to procrastinate, you count backward from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and immediately take action. This countdown disrupts the brain's hesitation, bypassing the limbic system and activating the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making and action. The beauty of this technique lies in its simplicity. It doesn't require any special tools, strategies, or complex systems. It only requires a decision to act and a small, immediate push to overcome the resistance. When you count down, your brain doesn't have time to talk you out of it. By the time you reach one, you're already moving. Whether it's getting out of bed in the morning, opening your laptop to work, or starting that difficult conversation, the 5-second rule is a powerful hack to force yourself into action instantly. Another powerful tool for overcoming procrastination is creating clarity around your tasks. One of the biggest reasons we procrastinate is the uncertainty surrounding a task. When we don't know exactly what needs to be done, we become paralyzed by indecision. The solution: break the task down into small, manageable steps. Instead of focusing on the entire project, focus on the next immediate action. If you're writing a report, don't think about the entire document. Focus on writing the introduction. If you're cleaning your house, don't think about the entire house. Focus on one room or even one corner. By creating clarity around your next step, you eliminate the ambiguity that causes hesitation. This makes it easier to act because you know exactly what needs to be done. And once you start, momentum builds. The brain is designed to follow through once we begin, and with each small step we move closer to completion. In addition to clarity, removing friction is another powerful way to overcome procrastination. Friction refers to anything that makes it harder to take action. It could be a cluttered workspace, a slow computer, or even the temptation to check your phone. The less friction there is between you and your goals, the easier it is to take action. To eliminate friction, set up your environment in a way that encourages productivity. For example, if you want to write, make sure your writing tools are readily available. If you want to exercise, lay out your workout clothes the night before. The more you remove obstacles from your environment, the less resistance you'll encounter when it's time to act. Fear is another powerful force that often fuels procrastination. When we're afraid of failure, rejection, or criticism, we avoid taking action because we're trying to protect ourselves from these negative outcomes. But what if we could reframe fear as fuel instead of a roadblock? Instead of allowing fear to paralyze us, we can use it to push ourselves into action. When fear rises, acknowledge it, but don't let it control you. Remember that fear is a natural response, and that taking action is the antidote. When you feel afraid, it's often a sign that you're stepping outside your comfort zone and doing something meaningful. Use this fear as a signal to act, not avoid. By pushing through fear, you not only build resilience, but you also prove to yourself that you're capable of overcoming challenges. This builds self-confidence and creates momentum for future actions. The key to breaking the cycle of procrastination lies in building momentum. One of the most effective ways to do this is by starting small. Begin with tiny actions that are almost impossible to fail at. These small wins trigger the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine and creating a sense of accomplishment. The more you succeed in taking small steps, the more motivated you'll become to continue. Over time, these micro-commitments build into larger, more meaningful actions, propelling you forward with unstoppable momentum. Another powerful way to force yourself into action is through accountability. When we're accountable to someone else, we're more likely to follow through on our commitments. Whether it's a friend, a colleague, or a mentor, having someone to hold you accountable creates a sense of responsibility that forces you to act. You don't want to let others down, and the fear of accountability can be a strong motivator. This is why public commitments, such as telling others about your goals or sharing your progress online, can significantly increase your chances of success. Ultimately, the key to overcoming procrastination and forcing yourself into action instantly is mastering your mindset. It's not about waiting for the perfect moment or the ideal conditions. It's about making a decision to act right now. Procrastination is a habit, and like any habit, it can be broken. The more you practice taking action, the easier it becomes. By hacking your brain's natural tendencies and using practical strategies like the 5-second rule, clarity, and removing friction, you can override hesitation and start making progress today. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and that step can be taken right now. The power to change your life is within you, and it starts with the decision to act immediately. Take that step today and let the momentum carry you forward. Chapter 2. Clarity trumps motivation. Indecision is one of the most subtle yet powerful barriers between where you are and where you want to be. It disguises itself as careful planning, thoughtful consideration, or waiting for the right moment. But in reality, indecision is a silent thief that keeps potential locked away. The antidote to this paralysis isn't more motivation or inspiration, it's clarity. Clear, precise understanding of what needs to be done transforms uncertainty into momentum, hesitation into action, and dreams into tangible outcomes. Motivation alone is fleeting, often unpredictable, and entirely unreliable. Clarity, on the other hand, is a concrete, actionable force. When you know exactly what your next move is, your brain doesn't waste energy debating possibilities, it simply executes. The human mind is astonishingly efficient at overcomplicating tasks. Faced with ambiguity, it searches endlessly for the perfect plan, the ideal moment, or the flawless strategy. Each pause triggers stress, guilt, and even a small chemical reaction of anxiety in the brain, releasing cortisol that further suppresses action. This creates a vicious cycle. Indecision produces stress. Stress paralyzes action, and paralysis deepens indecision. To break free, the first step is to define your task in unambiguous terms. Instead of thinking, "I need to improve my health," specify, "I will walk for 20 minutes at 7 a.m. today." Instead of, "I should work on my business," say, "I will write the first 200 words of my sales page before lunch." Exactitude eliminates internal debate. It gives the mind a singular, simple directive, leaving no room for excuses. Micro goals are the natural extension of this clarity. Large goals, such as become financially independent or write a best-selling book, can feel overwhelming because they are abstract and distant. The brain often perceives them as impossible, triggering resistance. Micro goals break these ambitions into manageable, immediate steps. Each small action is tangible, achievable, and measurable. For example, instead of attempting to read an entire book in a single sitting, commit to reading 10 pages. Instead of trying to overhaul your diet overnight, decide to swap one sugary drink for water today. These tiny, deliberate steps create a chain reaction of success. With each completed micro goal, your brain releases dopamine, reinforcing behavior and making the next action easier. Success compounds in this way, one deliberate step at a time. Creating a crystal-clear next step checklist is perhaps the most practical and transformative tool for immediate action. The checklist is not merely a to-do list. It's a strategic roadmap that removes the mental friction that indecision creates. When the next step is defined, the brain can stop ruminating over possibilities and focus entirely on execution. For instance, instead of writing "work on marketing strategy," your checklist could say, 1. Research top 3 competitors' social media campaigns. 2. Draft 5 sample social media posts. 3. Schedule 1 post for tomorrow morning. Each point is specific, actionable, and time-bound. Following this method transforms nebulous intentions into concrete behaviors, turning abstract ambition into measurable progress. Consider a real-life example. Thomas, a mid-level manager, struggled for months to launch a new team project. He knew what he wanted to achieve, but felt paralyzed every time he sat down to start. The sheer scale of the task, defining objectives, creating a workflow, assigning responsibilities, was overwhelming. Once he implemented clarity-based planning, everything changed. He broke the project into micro goals, drafting the initial proposal, identifying resources, scheduling meetings, and gathering feedback. Each task had an exact action and a clear completion criterion. By focusing on one micro goal at a time, Thomas overcame the paralysis of indecision. gained momentum, and completed the project in record time. His team noticed the shift, morale improved, and Thomas experienced firsthand how clarity fuels consistent action. Clarity also influences time perception, which is critical for immediate execution. When tasks are vague, time seems elastic. A 2-hour task feels like it might take all day. This perceived enormity makes it easy to defer action. By defining the next step precisely, you compress time mentally. A task that once seemed daunting now appears approachable because your brain can envision a start and an end point. This mental compression reduces stress and primes you for swift execution. Action begins to feel natural rather than forced, as if the next step exists almost outside of decision-making. It simply happens. A practical exercise to cultivate this clarity begins with a single sheet of paper or a digital note. Start by writing down the most important project or task for the day. Then, break it into 3 to 5 specific micro-goals. For each micro-goal, define an exact action and allocate a precise time window. For example, if your task is organize finances, micro-goals could be 1. List all monthly expenses by 10:00 a.m. 2. Identify top 3 unnecessary expenses by 11:00 a.m. 3. Set up automatic bill payments by 2:00 p.m. Immediately upon writing this checklist, commit to the first micro-goal. The clarity of your plan removes hesitation and sets the brain into motion. Clarity doesn't just drive action, it also cultivates confidence. When the mind knows what to do next, there is no room for self-doubt or second-guessing. The uncertainty that fuels procrastination evaporates. You feel a sense of control and purpose because you're moving deliberately toward a defined target. This confidence builds with every completed micro-goal. Over time, the habit of defining exact next steps becomes second nature, creating a personal ecosystem where action flows naturally from intention. It is essential to understand that clarity alone is not a substitute for discipline. Clarity provides the framework, the mental architecture, but action must follow. Execution is non-negotiable. A well-defined plan that sits untouched achieves nothing. Therefore, clarity must always be paired with immediate implementation. As Sun Tzu observed in The Art of War, strategy without action is a daydream. The plan itself has no power until applied. The magic happens in the intersection of precise intention and immediate movement. Another compelling reason clarity is superior to motivation is that motivation is fleeting. Inspiration comes and goes, influenced by mood, environment, and external circumstances. Waiting for motivation is waiting for a lightning strike. Clarity, however, creates a dependable internal structure. Once the next step is defined, the brain moves forward irrespective of emotional state. This is why elite performers, from athletes to CEOs, emphasize routine, preparation, and defined steps over relying on bursts of inspiration. Motivation may initiate the spark, but clarity sustains the flame. Incorporating clarity into daily life transforms how goals are approached. Every evening, spend 5 minutes planning the next day. Specify the most important tasks and their exact next steps. Allocate micro-goals for each. Visualize completion. Wake up with a roadmap ready to implement. The brain craves direction. By giving it clear instructions, you harness its natural efficiency. Action becomes automatic, almost instinctual, and the paralysis of indecision fades. Ultimately, clarity is the bridge between thought and execution. It dissolves hesitation, eliminates mental friction, and converts abstract ambitions into tangible actions. Each defined step, each micro-goal achieved, releases momentum and reinforces the habit of execution. Action ceases to be an occasional choice. It becomes the default response. When clarity drives every decision, the question is no longer whether to act, but how quickly and deliberately to act. The results compound, confidence builds, and what once felt impossible becomes inevitable. Mastering clarity is mastering the ability to act decisively, to force progress in every area of life, and to convert intention into results without waiting for fleeting motivation. Chapter 3. The 5-second rule. Every day, countless people know exactly what they should be doing, yet they find themselves frozen, staring at a task that seems simple but somehow feels impossible to start. That split second of hesitation, that mental pause between intention and action, is where procrastination thrives. The human brain, for all its brilliance, has an inherent bias toward comfort, ease, and avoidance of discomfort. Every decision to delay is a tiny battle between immediate comfort and long-term gain. The question is, how do you win that battle consistently without relying on fleeting motivation or endless willpower? The answer lies in a deceptively simple tool, the 5-second rule. The 5-second rule, pioneered by Mel Robbins, is not a psychological gimmick. It's a practical method that exploits the brain's natural wiring to overcome hesitation. The rule is simple. When you feel the urge to act on a goal, you count backward 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then physically move or initiate the action before your brain has a chance to invent excuses. This short countdown interrupts the mind's instinctual resistance. Neuroscience explains why it works. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making and action, has a brief window of opportunity before the limbic system, the emotional center that craves comfort and avoids pain, steps in to create doubt. Counting backward engages the prefrontal cortex immediately, allowing action to precede hesitation. Consider how the mind reacts when faced with a daunting task. There's an internal dialogue. I'll do it later. I'm not ready. It won't work anyway. These thoughts are automatic. They are the brain's attempt to protect you from perceived discomfort. Each second spent deliberating strengthens the limbic system's grip, making it progressively harder to start. The moment you count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you interrupt this automatic pattern. By the time you reach 1, your mind is already in motion, bypassing the cycle of procrastination and activating the neural pathways that lead to execution. This is not just a theory, it's a cognitive hack grounded in how decision-making works. The effectiveness of the 5-second rule becomes clear when applied consistently. Simple actions, like getting out of bed immediately when the alarm rings, become opportunities to train your brain. Instead of negotiating with yourself for 5 or 10 extra minutes, counting backward provides a physical and mental trigger to move. This micro-habit, repeated daily, rewires the brain to associate immediate action with every impulse toward a productive task. Small victories accumulate, and over time you build a momentum that reshapes how your brain responds to challenges and opportunities. A real-world example illustrates the transformative power of this approach. Jennifer, a freelance graphic designer, struggled for years with client deadlines. She knew what needed to be done, but her mornings were consumed by scrolling social media, debating whether to start projects, or making endless coffee. Once she began using the 5-second rule, everything shifted. Each time she felt the pull of distraction, she counted backward 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and opened the relevant file to start working. Within weeks, she noticed a dramatic increase in output and consistency. Tasks that had previously taken her an entire day were completed in hours. The psychological resistance diminished because action became automatic, almost reflexive. By forcing herself into motion before doubt could intervene, Jennifer turned procrastination into productivity. The beauty of the 5-second rule lies not only in its simplicity, but also in its universality. It can be applied to nearly every area of life, making a phone call you've been avoiding, speaking up in a meeting, exercising when your body resists, or even addressing uncomfortable conversations. Each use strengthens the neural pathways of decisive action, gradually creating a self-reinforcing loop of confidence and effectiveness. The more consistently you practice, the less effort it takes to override hesitation. The brain learns to default to action. To implement this technique effectively, practice begins with identifying moments of hesitation that frequently disrupt your day. Perhaps it's sitting down to draft an important email, making a sales call, or starting a workout. Each time you feel the mental pause, initiate a backward countdown. Importantly, it is not enough to merely count. The final step must involve immediate physical action. Move your body, open the document, pick up the phone, or step into the activity. Action triggers momentum, and momentum reinforces the behavior. The countdown acts as a bridge, connecting intention with execution in the smallest but most critical window of time. One practical exercise to master the 5-second rule is to integrate it into your morning routine. Upon waking, identify a single high-priority action for the day, no matter how small. It could be opening a notebook, starting a workout, or writing a paragraph of your project. The moment your mind drifts to excuses, "I'll start in a few minutes," "I need more time," immediately count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and initiate the task. Observe the impact of this tiny decision. The first few times may feel awkward, as your brain resists. Persistence is key. Each successful execution reinforces the neural connection between decision and action, gradually making instant movement the default response. The 5-second rule is also uniquely effective because it removes the illusion of motivation. Waiting to feel motivated is one of the most common traps for procrastinators. Motivation is unpredictable. It comes and goes, influenced by mood, energy, and external circumstances. The 5-second rule bypasses the need for motivation entirely. Action becomes mechanical, driven by a countdown rather than emotional states. The brain's resistance is bypassed by structured immediacy, and results follow because consistent behavior outweighs sporadic inspiration. Moreover, this technique fosters courage. Every time you force yourself to act despite fear, doubt, or hesitation, you strengthen mental resilience. The first step into action often feels uncomfortable because it challenges ingrained patterns of avoidance. However, discomfort is a signal of growth. The more frequently you practice the 5-second rule, the more habitual facing discomfort becomes. You stop avoiding challenges, and over time, you begin to embrace them. Your brain learns that the initial resistance is temporary, and that reward and progress lie on the other side of action. The underlying principle behind the rule is deceptively simple: action precedes motivation. The first movement, whether physical, mental, or emotional, initiates a chain reaction. Dopamine is released, confidence rises, and the mind begins to perceive possibility rather than obstacle. Tasks, once delayed indefinitely, now become approachable. By consistently practicing this rule, you transform your relationship with hesitation. The mind no longer perceives discomfort as a stop sign. Instead, it becomes a trigger for immediate engagement. Long-term mastery of the 5-second rule requires repetition and consistency. Start with small, low-stakes actions to strengthen the habit. Gradually expand to larger, more meaningful challenges. Celebrate each completed action, not the eventual outcome, reinforcing the behavior rather than external rewards. Over time, you will notice that procrastination loses its grip. Decision-making accelerates, and life begins to feel like a series of deliberate, intentional moves rather than endless delays. In essence, the 5-second rule is more than a productivity hack. It is a tool for transformation. It empowers individuals to reclaim control over their attention, their choices, and their time. By counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and moving immediately, you leverage the brain's natural wiring to your advantage, bypass hesitation, and convert intention into immediate action. This simple yet profound technique bridges the gap between thought and accomplishment, proving that the smallest, most deliberate actions can lead to the most extraordinary results. The power to change behavior, seize opportunities, and transform life begins with a single countdown, and the courage to take the step as soon as it reaches 1. Chapter 4. Eliminate friction. In the pursuit of consistent action and high performance, one of the most overlooked barriers is friction. Friction is the invisible resistance that slows us down, saps our energy, and turns simple tasks into monumental efforts. It can appear in countless forms: cluttered workspaces, endless notifications, decision fatigue, poorly organized tools, or even a disorganized mind. Each point of friction forces the brain to expend extra energy just to begin, creating delays that accumulate into days, weeks, or even months of lost potential. The key to consistent automatic action lies in identifying and eliminating this resistance at every level. The easier it is to act, the more likely action becomes the default, natural state. Distractions are the first form of friction to confront. In the modern world, distraction is the silent epidemic of productivity. Every ping, notification, or social media alert hijacks attention, pulling focus away from meaningful work. Each interruption forces the brain to restart, costing precious mental energy and creating decision fatigue. Even a momentary distraction can add minutes to a task, and the cumulative effect is staggering. To eliminate these distractions, it's essential to intentionally design an environment where focus is the path of least resistance. Silence notifications, create digital boundaries, and designate specific time windows for communication. A workspace devoid of unnecessary stimuli transforms attention into a resource you can direct at will, rather than a constantly fragmented asset. Decision fatigue is another critical form of friction that slows progress. Every choice we make, big or small, uses mental energy. By the time the brain has made countless decisions, from what to eat for breakfast to which emails to answer first, its capacity for high-quality decision-making diminishes. This depletion leads to procrastination, avoidance, or impulsive actions that derail goals. Eliminating friction means reducing unnecessary decisions by pre-planning, automating, or delegating routine choices. Simple techniques like setting a uniform morning routine, pre-selecting meals, or preparing work tasks the night before reduce mental load, freeing cognitive resources for meaningful action. The less the brain must negotiate with itself over trivial matters, the more it can devote to high-priority tasks that move life forward. Preparing the environment for automatic action is a principle that can transform productivity overnight. The idea is simple: when action is easy and immediate, the brain follows naturally. Small adjustments create massive returns. For instance, if the goal is to exercise consistently, leaving workout clothes and shoes next to the bed or in the living room removes barriers to starting. If the objective is to write daily, keeping a notebook or laptop in a visible, accessible location signals to the brain that writing is the easiest path forward. These intentional setups reduce resistance, allowing action to flow without hesitation. Environment is not just background, it's a co-creator of behavior. Action-friendly setups extend to digital tools as well. Applications, reminders, and automation can all be arranged to minimize cognitive load. Calendar systems that schedule high-priority tasks, project management tools that track progress visually, or automated bill payments for recurring expenses remove decision points and make action predictable. Even the organization of folders and digital files can either accelerate productivity or create friction that derails it. When everything is prepared for action, there's no need to deliberate or negotiate. Starting becomes the default state. A real-world example underscores the power of eliminating friction. Marcus, an entrepreneur, struggled to maintain a consistent content creation schedule. His workspace was cluttered, notifications from multiple apps were constant, and he spent valuable energy deciding where to begin each day. By implementing friction reduction, Marcus transformed his output. He silenced non-essential notifications, organized his workspace so that his laptop, notes, and reference materials were immediately accessible, and created a checklist of micro-tasks to follow each morning. Within a week, Marcus's productivity doubled. Tasks that once felt overwhelming now flowed naturally because every element in his environment supported action rather than resistance. The mental energy previously wasted on negotiating barriers was redirected toward execution and creativity. Practically, the process of eliminating friction begins with a simple exercise. Audit your environment for obstacles to action. Walk through your typical day and identify any point where movement slows, hesitation occurs, or energy is wasted. It could be a cluttered desk, multiple open browser tabs, excessive notifications, or an unclear workflow. For each friction point, design a solution that makes the action effortless. This could involve organizing tools, presetting reminders, automating repetitive tasks, or creating a specific physical space dedicated to a particular type of work. Small changes produce outsized effects because they remove the subtle forces that prevent action from occurring naturally. Another critical element in eliminating friction is simplifying tasks themselves. Often, we resist starting because the task feels complex or undefined. By breaking down work into bite-sized, immediately actionable steps, friction disappears. The mind no longer stalls over where to begin because each step is clearly defined. For example, rather than planning to organize an entire room, a frictionless approach would be pick up all clothes from the floor and place them in the laundry basket, followed by sort papers into 3 piles, keep, shred, recycle. Each step is simple, achievable, and immediately actionable, turning a daunting project into a series of friction-free actions that build momentum. Eliminating friction also fosters a psychological state of flow, where focus is effortless and distraction is minimized. The brain, when not weighed down by unnecessary choices or obstacles, can immerse fully in the task at hand. Momentum builds naturally because each completed step reduces resistance to the next. This compounding effect is one reason why small adjustments to environment, tools, and routines can produce massive results over time. The brain thrives in structured simplicity, and every layer of friction removed is a layer of potential unlocked. Another often overlooked aspect is the emotional friction caused by clutter and disorder. Messy environments create subtle stress signals that drain energy and focus, often without conscious awareness. A clean, organized, and intentional environment communicates to the brain that action is possible, that tasks are manageable, and that productivity is the natural state. This emotional clarity reduces procrastination, increases confidence, and encourages immediate engagement. Even minimal changes, such as tidying a desk or clearing digital notifications, can release substantial mental bandwidth for meaningful action. Ultimately, eliminating friction is about designing your life to make success the path of least resistance. It's not about working harder, but about working smarter, aligning every part of your environment with your goals and desired behaviors. When action is easier than hesitation, the brain chooses action naturally. The habit of removing friction compounds over time, producing an environment, both physical and mental, that supports continual growth, execution, and momentum. It transforms productivity from a struggle into a natural, almost automatic rhythm of life. The power of frictionless action is profound. Once distractions, decision fatigue, and environmental obstacles are minimized, momentum flows effortlessly, and tasks that once felt impossible are approached with confidence and ease. Small intentional adjustments create a foundation where execution becomes simple, immediate, and reliable. Every barrier removed is a step toward mastery, efficiency, and lasting results. By eliminating friction, you create a life where progress is not just possible, but inevitable, and where each action is supported by an environment deliberately designed for success. Chapter 5: Fear as Fuel. Hesitation is rarely what it seems. Most often, it wears the disguise of fear, that tiny pause before taking a step toward a goal, the internal resistance that whispers doubt, the sudden urge to avoid starting something important. All of it is fear presenting itself as indecision. Fear is the brain's mechanism for survival, wired over millennia to keep humans safe from perceived danger. In modern life, the dangers we face are rarely physical. They are emotional, social, and reputational. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, or even fear of success can all create a paralyzing pause, a moment where action seems impossible. Recognizing that hesitation is fear in disguise is the first step toward mastering it and using it as fuel rather than allowing it to control your life. Fear signals potential risk, but it also carries energy. That same adrenaline that creates the sensation of anxiety can be harnessed to propel movement. When the mind labels something as frightening, the body responds with heightened alertness, increased heart rate, and a surge of energy. Most people interpret this surge as a warning to stop, to retreat, or to wait. But the truth is that this energy is a powerful resource. It can be converted into focus, drive, and determination if channeled correctly. Understanding this biological response transforms fear from a roadblock into a launchpad, giving you the power to act decisively at the very moment hesitation arises. The first step in transforming fear into action is awareness. Acknowledge the fear without judgment. Recognize the specific emotion and the thoughts that accompany it. Often, fear is amorphous and general. I don't think I can do this, but breaking it down into concrete concerns, such as, I'm worried I will make a mistake in the presentation, allows you to confront it directly. This awareness is crucial because it shifts fear from an unseen amorphous force into a defined energy source that can be redirected. Once identified, fear becomes a signal, not a sentence, guiding you toward action rather than avoidance. A practical approach to using fear as fuel is to lean into it. When you feel the instinct to pull back, deliberately take one step forward. Physical movement, even small, signals to the brain that inaction is not an option. This could be standing up and starting a project, picking up the phone to make a call, or beginning the first paragraph of a daunting report. Action in the presence of fear does two things. It begins to dismantle the power that fear holds, and it converts the nervous energy into productive momentum. The first movement often triggers clarity, focus, and a cascade of additional steps that otherwise would have remained dormant under hesitation. Real-life examples illustrate the transformative power of fear when harnessed correctly. Consider Sarah, a young entrepreneur preparing to pitch her startup to a room full of investors. The fear was palpable. Her hands shook, her stomach churned, and self-doubt flooded her mind. Most would have delayed, sought more preparation, or found an excuse to avoid the confrontation. Instead, she consciously acknowledged the fear, took a deep breath, and stepped onto the stage. That adrenaline, once a source of anxiety, became the driver of her confidence and energy. Her presentation flowed with clarity and persuasion, and several investors expressed immediate interest. What once threatened to immobilize her became the very mechanism that amplified her performance. Fear in this instance became fuel rather than a barrier. Another example can be found in athletic performance. Elite athletes often speak of the edge that fear creates before competition. The butterflies in their stomach, the surge of tension, the racing heart, these are all biological signals of fear. Yet, top performers channel this energy into focus, intensity, and peak execution. Fear heightens senses, increases awareness, and amplifies effort. Without this fear, the body and mind remain in a baseline state. By interpreting fear as an ally, athletes transform what could be paralysis into a strategic advantage that sharpens performance and drives results. To apply this concept in daily life, start with a simple exercise. Identify one task today that triggers fear or discomfort. It could be initiating a difficult conversation, applying for a job, making a sales call, or starting a project you've been avoiding. Before taking action, pause for a moment and consciously recognize the fear. Note the physical sensations, tightness in the chest, tension in the shoulders, rapid heartbeat. Instead of retreating, lean into these sensations. Take one deliberate, immediate step forward, no matter how small. The act of moving, despite fear, trains the brain to associate fear with action rather than avoidance. Over time, this rewiring strengthens courage, resilience, and confidence, turning fear from a restraining force into a reliable source of momentum. The psychological mechanism behind this is powerful. Each time action occurs in the presence of fear, the brain updates its internal model of what is safe and achievable. Repeated exposure to fear paired with action reduces its intensity over time, making subsequent challenges feel less intimidating. This does not eliminate fear, it refines the brain's perception, transforming it from a paralyzing signal into a catalyst for growth. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is action despite it, and every deliberate act in the face of fear strengthens the neural pathways that support decisiveness and resilience. Fear can also serve as a diagnostic tool. It highlights areas where growth, progress, or opportunity exists. Tasks that feel frightening often align with the edge of your comfort zone, the exact place where transformation occurs. If fear is present, it is a signal that action will yield disproportionate rewards, personal growth, or advancement toward meaningful goals. Recognizing this allows you to reframe fear from a warning to a signpost, guiding attention and effort to the areas that matter most. By embracing fear in this way, you convert what is commonly perceived as a limitation into a strategic advantage. Another dimension of fear as fuel is its effect on time perception and urgency. Fear heightens awareness of potential consequences and compresses mental timelines. This heightened state encourages quicker decision-making and faster execution, reducing procrastination. The energy that would otherwise dissipate in worry or hesitation is redirected into deliberate, intentional action. This mechanism explains why people under pressure, facing deadlines or high stakes, often achieve more in a short period than during routine conditions. The fear-induced surge becomes an engine for productivity. The practice of converting fear into momentum requires consistent reflection and deliberate action. Begin by journaling instances of hesitation and identifying the underlying fear. For each instance, outline a single action that moves you forward, despite the anxiety. Execute that step immediately. Track the outcomes and observe how energy shifts from apprehension to drive. Over time, you develop a habit of interpreting fear as a cue for immediate action rather than avoidance. This practice fosters not just productivity, but resilience, confidence, and mastery over self-imposed limitations. Harnessing fear transforms the very nature of progress. Hesitation no longer controls decisions. Anxiety becomes a source of power. Tasks once avoided become opportunities for growth. Real-world success, whether in business, personal development, or performance, often traces back to individuals who acted despite fear, converting energy that would have immobilized others into extraordinary momentum. The brain, body, and mind align in deliberate execution, proving that fear is not a weakness, but a latent resource, waiting to be transformed into action, achievement, and personal mastery. Chapter 6: Micro-commitments and momentum. Change often feels like a massive leap, an overwhelming chasm between who you are today and who you want to become tomorrow. The brain, wired for efficiency and survival, instinctively resists enormous leaps because they feel risky and uncertain. That resistance can manifest as procrastination, avoidance, or self-doubt. The antidote to this paralysis is deceptively simple. Start small. Micro-commitments, tiny actions that are almost impossible to fail at, create an immediate pathway toward momentum. By shrinking the size of the action, the brain perceives it as manageable, and resistance diminishes. What once seemed daunting becomes achievable, and the first step, no matter how small, generates energy that propels you forward. The concept of micro-commitments revolves around leveraging the brain's natural reward system. When you complete a task, even a minute one, the brain releases dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure, motivation, and reinforcement of behavior. These small wins act as signals of progress, encouraging the brain to continue. Completing a single tiny step, like writing one sentence of a report, organizing one drawer, or sending one email, triggers a feeling of accomplishment. That micro-win is powerful because it creates psychological momentum. The brain interprets success as evidence of capability, reducing fear, anxiety, and hesitation, and making the next step feel more attainable. Momentum itself is a force that compounds over time. Just as a snowball gains size and speed rolling downhill, small, consistent actions accumulate into significant results. Each micro-step, while minor in isolation, builds a chain of completed actions that reinforce discipline, focus, and confidence. The brain starts to anticipate accomplishment rather than resistance. Once this cycle begins, action becomes easier, faster, and more automatic. Momentum turns the process of achieving goals from a strenuous effort into a natural, almost effortless flow. The key lies in understanding that action does not need to be monumental to be effective. It only needs to be consistent. A real-world example illustrates the transformative power of micro-commitments. Alex, a software developer, struggled for months to write a technical blog series. The sheer thought of completing multiple articles felt intimidating, so he kept postponing the work. To overcome this, he implemented a micro-commitment strategy. He committed to writing a single paragraph each day. That tiny, almost trivial step felt doable and immediately actionable. Within a week, Alex found himself writing 2 or 3 paragraphs daily without conscious effort. Each paragraph reinforced a sense of progress, triggering dopamine and creating psychological momentum. In less than a month, he completed the entire series. What began as a single micro-commitment snowballed into unstoppable productivity. To implement micro-commitments in daily life, the first step is to identify a meaningful goal that has been resisted. Break that goal into its smallest actionable components, actions so small that the possibility of failure is negligible. For instance, if your goal is to exercise consistently, start with 1 push-up, 1 squat, or a single minute of movement. The physical act of starting, no matter how minor, is more important than the quantity. Each small completion creates a reward signal in the brain, which reinforces the behavior and reduces psychological friction for the next step. Another critical principle is sequencing micro-commitments to build momentum intentionally. Think of each tiny action as a link in a chain, with each subsequent step naturally following the previous one. For example, if your objective is to declutter a home office, start by picking up one piece of paper, then organize one drawer. Next, sort a single stack of files. The brain perceives each step as achievable, and the cumulative effect is a full, organized space, accomplished with minimal resistance. The key is to ensure that each step feels manageable. Too large a step invites hesitation. Too small a step may not trigger momentum. The balance lies in creating consistent, actionable movement. Micro-commitments also provide a buffer against perfectionism. Often, fear of failure or the desire to execute perfectly prevents people from starting. Tiny steps bypass this paralysis because they are inherently low stakes. Writing one sentence, taking one action, or making one call removes the mental weight of doing it perfectly while still generating progress. This approach reframes action as a habit-building exercise rather than a test of skill or outcome. Progress becomes the metric of success, not flawlessness. The psychological principle behind this approach is straightforward. Action leads to motivation, not the other way around. Waiting for inspiration or energy before beginning is a trap. Because motivation is transient and unpredictable, micro-commitments circumvent this by making the act of starting so small that the brain cannot generate resistance. The first tiny step produces the chemical and emotional signals that naturally increase motivation, creating a self-reinforcing loop. By prioritizing execution over emotion, the brain learns that movement itself is the reward. A practical daily exercise to build momentum involves creating a micro-commitment list each morning. Choose 3 high-priority tasks for the day and break each into its smallest possible step. For instance, if a goal is to improve health, micro-commitments could include: drink 1 glass of water upon waking, take a single lap around the block, or do 1 push-up. Execute these micro-steps immediately. Observe the effect on your energy, focus, and willingness to tackle larger tasks. Gradually increase the complexity of each subsequent micro-commitment as momentum builds. The goal is to create an unstoppable cascade of action that compounds over the day. The cumulative impact of micro-commitments extends far beyond individual tasks. Over time, this approach reshapes behavior, builds discipline, and reinforces self-efficacy. Each completed micro-step strengthens the belief in personal capability, reduces fear of action, and enhances confidence. Momentum becomes habitual rather than situational, creating an internal environment where progress is continuous and obstacles feel smaller. By starting small, the seemingly impossible becomes inevitable. Momentum derived from micro-commitments also creates a positive feedback loop that influences emotional state. The dopamine released with each small success improves mood, sharpens focus, and amplifies determination. Action produces energy, energy produces more action, and each cycle compounds results. This psychological momentum transforms the experience of work from resistance-laden struggle into a state of flow where movement is automatic, effort is minimal, and results are exponential. The brain begins to expect progress, and procrastination loses its power. Ultimately, the principle of micro-commitments teaches that monumental achievements are not the product of sporadic heroics, but of consistent, deliberate small actions. The habit of starting, even in the smallest way, creates the engine for larger, meaningful accomplishments. By breaking down tasks, celebrating tiny wins, and sequencing steps to reinforce momentum, anyone can transform inertia into unstoppable movement. The key is to act immediately, consistently, and intentionally, letting each micro step ignite the next, until what once seemed impossible becomes a natural, effortless reality. Chapter 7. Accountability Accelerators. Action without accountability is like trying to sail a boat without a rudder. Momentum can start, but it drifts, stalls, and often dissipates into inaction. The human mind, despite its brilliance, is wired to prioritize comfort and avoid discomfort whenever possible. Without some form of external pressure, it's far too easy to justify delays, sidestep responsibilities, or postpone progress. Accountability acts as a powerful accelerator, creating an external structure that demands immediate action and maintains consistency. When someone else knows what you're doing, or when your goals are made visible, the mind shifts from optional effort to necessary execution. Accountability is not just a motivational gimmick, it's a psychological trigger that compels action and harnesses human social behavior to drive results.
External accountability works because humans are inherently social creatures. Our actions, choices, and even our self-perception are influenced by others, whether we realize it or not.
Knowing that someone is observing, tracking, or depending on our commitment generates a subtle but powerful pressure to act. This pressure engages the brain's reward and punishment systems simultaneously. The potential praise or recognition for completing a task stimulates dopamine, reinforcing positive behavior. Conversely, the discomfort, embarrassment, or loss of credibility associated with failing to follow through activates stress signals that propel movement. This dual mechanism, reward and consequence, creates a unique state in which hesitation becomes far less likely and immediate action becomes the default. Friends, mentors, or trusted colleagues serve as natural accountability partners. Simply telling someone about a goal transforms it from an abstract intention into a social contract. The moment a commitment is shared, it acquires a tangible weight. This social dimension reduces the likelihood of procrastination because humans instinctively desire to maintain reputation and trust. It's no longer just about personal ambition, it's about fulfilling an expectation that exists outside oneself. Effective accountability partners provide structure, encouragement, and gentle pressure. They act as mirrors reflecting progress or lack thereof, creating a feedback loop that propels momentum. Public commitments are an even more powerful form of accountability because they leverage social exposure to amplify urgency. Sharing your goals with a community, posting progress on social media, or announcing milestones to a group multiplies both the internal and external drivers of action. Once a commitment is public, the mind recognizes that inaction is visible and often socially costly. The fear of letting others down or facing scrutiny becomes a motivational catalyst. Public accountability transforms abstract aspirations into concrete obligations, compelling individuals to act immediately rather than defer progress indefinitely. Digital tools are another way to create accountability accelerators in the modern age. Applications for task management, habit tracking, and collaborative projects provide real-time visibility into goals and progress. When milestones are logged, deadlines are tracked, and progress is shared with others, accountability is embedded into the system itself. These tools remove reliance on memory or self-discipline alone, providing structure that encourages regular follow-through. Even simple progress bars or streaks can stimulate dopamine release, rewarding consistent action and reinforcing the habit of execution. Technology, when harnessed correctly, amplifies the natural psychological mechanisms of accountability, making consistency almost automatic. A real-world example illustrates the impact of accountability accelerators. Lucas, An aspiring writer struggled for years to finish his first novel. Despite knowing what needed to be done, he consistently delayed writing sessions. To overcome this, he enlisted a mentor and joined a writing group. Every week, Lucas had to submit a portion of his work for review. The anticipation of sharing progress created a tangible pressure to act. The combination of mentorship, guidance, and public accountability drove Lucas to write daily, even on days he lacked motivation. Within months, the novel reached completion, a feat that would have been unlikely without these layers of external accountability. Social pressure, expectation, and visibility transformed sporadic effort into a structured, unstoppable flow of action. Implementing accountability accelerators begins with selecting partners who are supportive yet honest. Choose people who will track progress, provide feedback, and hold you responsible for commitments. Explain the specific goals and timelines clearly so that the expectations are tangible. The mere act of verbalizing these goals to another person immediately increases commitment because it introduces consequences beyond internal desire. This framework provides both direction and external reinforcement, transforming intentions into real-world achievements. For public accountability, start small by sharing specific goals with a community or audience that matters. For example, posting daily or weekly progress updates on professional forums, social media, or community groups creates visibility. Each post becomes a checkpoint, a moment where momentum is tested and reinforced. The act of broadcasting intentions taps into human social instincts, where consistency, reliability, and reputation drive adherence. The combination of visibility and social expectation converts abstract goals into urgent tasks that demand execution. A practical daily exercise to leverage accountability accelerators is to establish a check-in ritual. Identify one goal or task each day and share it with an accountability partner or group by a specific time. Track completion through a shared digital platform, message, or post. At the end of the day, report progress honestly, no matter how minor the achievement. This ritual conditions the brain to associate visibility and accountability with action, creating a consistent loop of behavior that strengthens discipline and reduces procrastination. Over time, this practice embeds a natural rhythm of execution that does not rely solely on internal motivation. Accountability accelerators also work by providing feedback loops that guide refinement and improvement. Partners, mentors, or digital tools not only encourage action, but also highlight inefficiencies, gaps, or areas for enhancement. This immediate reflection ensures that effort is not just applied, but applied effectively. The brain learns that action coupled with accountability is a reliable path to tangible outcomes, reinforcing both behavior and competence. Consistent feedback maintains engagement, motivation, and the sense of purpose, preventing drift and complacency. The power of accountability extends beyond individual tasks. It shapes long-term habits and character. Repeatedly acting under the lens of external expectations builds integrity, resilience, and self-discipline. Over time, the reliance on external accountability diminishes as internal standards rise, yet the foundation remains. The habit of immediate, deliberate action becomes second nature. Execution becomes automatic, and the brain associates both commitment and visibility with consistent follow-through. Momentum becomes ingrained because accountability creates a structured environment where action is not optional but inevitable. Ultimately, accountability accelerators transform the landscape of human productivity. They leverage social influence, public exposure, and digital monitoring to reduce hesitation, reinforce consistency, and ensure follow-through. By strategically integrating friends, mentors, communities, or technological systems, any goal, regardless of complexity or difficulty, becomes actionable. Accountability turns vague intentions into concrete obligations, inertia into motion, and potential into results. The path to success is rarely traveled alone. Structured, deliberate accountability ensures that action is immediate, consistent, and unstoppable. When executed effectively, accountability accelerates momentum, transforms habits, and produces results that would be impossible through willpower alone. Chapter 8. The Power of Now Thinking. Every time the phrase "I'll do it later" crosses the mind, productivity dies a little inside. That tiny deferral, seemingly harmless in the moment, is a trap the brain sets for itself. It tricks you into believing that time is infinite, that urgency is optional, and that comfort can take precedence over progress. In reality, each later compounds into hours, days, or even years of lost opportunity. The problem isn't laziness, it's the brain's natural tendency to avoid immediate discomfort. Tasks that require effort, focus, or confrontation trigger an internal resistance that whispers, "Not now, maybe later." This resistance can become a subtle but powerful force, gradually eroding ambition, efficiency, and confidence. The antidote is adopting a mindset rooted in now thinking, a deliberate, disciplined approach that transforms the impulse to delay into immediate action. The brain responds to immediacy. When tasks are postponed, the mind builds a narrative of excuses. "I'm too tired," "I need more preparation," or "it's not the right time." Each story reinforces avoidance and strengthens procrastination patterns. Now thinking disrupts this cycle by creating a sense of urgency that bypasses deliberation. The moment the impulse arises to act, you move before hesitation has time to form. This approach aligns with the principle that action produces motivation, not the other way around. When the brain experiences progress immediately, dopamine is released, reinforcing the behavior and creating a self-perpetuating cycle of productivity. Acting instantly reprograms the mind to associate effort with reward rather than with fear or discomfort. A powerful tool for cultivating now thinking is mental reframing. Instead of viewing a task as difficult, inconvenient, or unpleasant, reframe it as an opportunity to grow, gain momentum, or achieve something meaningful. For example, instead of thinking, "I have to do this presentation," shift to, "This presentation is a chance to demonstrate my expertise and gain recognition." The reframing changes the emotional context of the task, making immediate action more appealing and delaying it less tolerable. The mind interprets the task as desirable rather than burdensome, reducing the natural resistance that fuels procrastination. Real-world examples highlight the impact of now thinking. Take Maria, a marketing manager who constantly delayed important strategy reports, always convincing herself she would tackle them tomorrow. The postponements created stress, missed opportunities, and a backlog of work that felt unmanageable. Once she adopted now thinking, her approach transformed. At the moment she recognized the need to act, she committed to starting within 5 minutes. Even if only a first paragraph or rough outline was completed, the immediate action generated momentum. Within weeks, her reports were submitted ahead of deadlines. She felt more confident in her work, and the habit of instant initiation replaced months of habitual delay. The brain, rewarded for immediate action, learned that progress was best achieved without hesitation. Developing a habit of instant initiation requires consistency and deliberate practice. Begin by identifying moments of delay in daily life. These are often repetitive, responding to emails, beginning a workout, making a difficult call, or starting a creative project. Each time you notice the urge to postpone, consciously override it by taking a tangible step immediately. The step does not need to be perfect or complete. Its purpose is to disrupt the inertia and initiate movement. This approach reduces mental friction because starting, even imperfectly, is easier than negotiating with excuses. Action precedes motivation, and with repetition, the brain begins to default to immediate execution. A practical exercise for building this habit is to implement the 5-minute rule. Choose a task you've been avoiding and commit to working on it for only 5 minutes, starting right now. Set a timer and begin without overthinking. The short duration reduces perceived effort and diminishes resistance. Often, once those 5 minutes are underway, the brain naturally extends focus and engagement beyond the initial limit. The key is that starting is immediate. The brain cannot invent reasons to delay when a concrete immediate action has begun. Over time, this simple practice trains the mind to treat all tasks with immediacy rather than deferral. The principle of now thinking also intersects with the concept of pre-commitment. By deciding in advance to act immediately when a trigger occurs, the mind bypasses the debate over whether to start. For instance, commit that every time the phone rings from a client, the response will occur within the first minute. Or every morning, begin journaling, exercising, or planning your day within 5 minutes of waking. By embedding these commitments into habitual routines, the brain forms an automatic response pattern. Delays become unnatural, resistance diminishes, and momentum builds effortlessly. Now thinking becomes internalized, transforming the way daily tasks are approached. Emotional reinforcement plays a crucial role in cementing instant initiation. Celebrate each immediate action, no matter how small. Acknowledge the completion of a task within moments of starting. This self-recognition triggers positive reinforcement, linking immediate action with emotional reward. Over time, this feedback loop strengthens the habit and makes procrastination increasingly uncomfortable by comparison. The brain learns that hesitation delays gratification, whereas acting now produces a tangible sense of accomplishment, energy, and control. Technology can also support now thinking by reducing procrastination cues and providing immediate prompts. Simple notifications or task reminders set for immediate action can act as external triggers. For example, an alarm that reminds you to start a task at a precise time, a checklist that requires marking completion as soon as a step is initiated, or digital tools that gamify progress all reinforce instant action. These mechanisms harness external stimuli to reinforce internal habits, creating a seamless bridge between intention and execution. Instant initiation also mitigates the stress and cognitive load associated with delayed tasks. The longer a task is postponed, the more it occupies mental space, creating anxiety and eroding focus. Each deferral compounds, transforming a simple responsibility into a looming source of stress. Acting immediately dissolves this cognitive burden. The brain experiences clarity, relief, and regained focus, reinforcing the value of now thinking. Tasks are no longer perceived as overwhelming obstacles, but as manageable actions completed in real time, cultivating a sense of control and empowerment. The transformation achieved through now thinking extends far beyond productivity. It reshapes self-perception, confidence, and agency. Individuals who practice instant initiation internalize the belief that they are decisive, capable, and in control of their outcomes. The brain associates immediate action with competence, reducing self-doubt and enhancing resilience. Over time, this mindset becomes automatic, creating a life in which opportunity is seized promptly, challenges are met with action, and procrastination loses its grip entirely. Ultimately, the power of now thinking is the power of immediacy, the deliberate choice to act at the earliest possible moment. It rewires the brain to view delay as counterproductive, replaces hesitation with motion, and transforms intention into measurable progress. By combining mental reframing, pre-commitment, immediate action exercises, and emotional reinforcement, individuals cultivate a habit of instant initiation that becomes second nature. The path to consistent productivity, achievement, and personal mastery begins the moment action is chosen over delay, proving that the best time to act is always now.
Chapter 9. Energy over motivation.
Relying on motivation to get things done is like trying to drive a car using only the gas pedal when the engine itself is weak. Motivation is fleeting, inconsistent, and often dependent on circumstances beyond your control. Some days it surges, making action feel effortless. Other days it evaporates entirely, leaving tasks untouched and ambitions deferred. The truth is that motivation alone cannot sustain consistent execution. High achievers understand this and focus instead on energy, the raw capacity to act, focus, and persist. Energy, unlike motivation, can be cultivated, managed, and optimized. It's a resource that, when tapped correctly, allows you to act instantly, even in the absence of excitement or inspiration. Understanding how to leverage energy rather than wait for motivation is the secret to consistent productivity and immediate action. Energy flows in predictable cycles throughout the day. The body and mind are not designed to maintain peak intensity continuously. Instead, they operate in rhythms influenced by circadian patterns, nutrition, sleep, and mental load. Recognizing and respecting these cycles transforms productivity. Tasks that require focus, creativity, or decision-making are best aligned with peak energy periods, while less demanding tasks can be scheduled during natural dips. When energy is consciously managed, action becomes almost automatic. You no longer wait for motivation to strike because you are leveraging the periods when the body and mind are naturally primed for execution. Physical states play a critical role in energy management. The body's condition directly influences the brain's capacity to initiate and sustain action. Fatigue, tension, and stagnation create resistance to starting, while movement, oxygenation, and circulation trigger alertness and mental clarity. Even small interventions, a series of stretches, a brisk walk, or deep breathing can dramatically shift energy levels. These physical hacks stimulate the nervous system, increase blood flow, and prime the brain for engagement. By manipulating your physiological state, you can create the conditions necessary for immediate action, independent of fluctuating motivation. Breathing techniques are a simple yet powerful way to boost energy. Deep, controlled breathing increases oxygen supply to the brain, reduces stress hormones, and activates the sympathetic nervous system, preparing the body for action. Techniques like box breathing, inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, can instantly improve focus and mental clarity. This method provides a tangible, repeatable mechanism to generate energy on demand. When hesitation arises, a few cycles of conscious breathing reset the body, align the mind, and create a platform for immediate execution. Micro-workouts also serve as potent energy accelerators. Even 2 to 5 minutes of dynamic movement, push-ups, squats, or jumping jacks stimulate endorphins, elevate heart rate, and trigger alertness. The simplicity of these exercises makes them accessible anywhere, and their impact on energy is immediate. By embedding micro-workouts into daily routines, you cultivate a physical state that supports spontaneous action. Each session reinforces the connection between bodily energy and mental readiness, making the initiation of tasks faster, easier, and more consistent. Real-world application highlights the power of energy over motivation. Consider David, a freelance designer who struggled to start projects on low-motivation days. Waiting for inspiration often resulted in procrastination and missed deadlines. He began experimenting with energy management techniques, scheduling complex design tasks during morning peak energy hours, incorporating 2-minute micro-workouts before starting, and using deep breathing to center focus. The results were immediate. On days when motivation was absent, David's energy hacks allowed him to begin work quickly, maintain focus, and complete projects on schedule. He realized that action was not about feeling motivated, it was about creating the physiological and mental conditions to act, independent of mood. Energy management also intersects with nutrition and rest. Blood sugar fluctuations, dehydration, and insufficient sleep can dramatically decrease available energy, making tasks feel insurmountable. Strategic consumption of protein, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates stabilizes energy, while hydration ensures cognitive and physical efficiency. Similarly, adequate rest allows the nervous system to recover, supporting consistent peak performance. Recognizing energy as a finite, manageable resource creates a mindset shift. Productivity is no longer a test of willpower, but a system of input and output, where deliberate care and strategic intervention produce consistent results. The principle of micro-actions complements energy management. When energy dips, initiating large tasks may feel impossible, but small, immediate steps capitalize on residual energy and gradually rebuild momentum. For instance, drafting a single paragraph, outlining a section, or responding to one email can trigger a cascade of productive movement. By leveraging available energy strategically, you overcome inertia and set the stage for extended focus periods. The combination of energy awareness and micro-action ensures that even low motivation periods become opportunities for progress. A practical daily exercise to harness energy over motivation is to create an energy map. Track energy levels throughout the day for 1 week, noting periods of high and low alertness. Identify tasks that require intense focus, creativity, or decision-making, and schedule them during peak energy windows. Integrate micro-workouts, deep breathing, and movement breaks during low-energy periods to sustain engagement. Over time, this map allows precise alignment of energy availability with action requirements, reducing reliance on motivation and increasing immediate execution. The brain begins to anticipate action during optimal energy periods, creating a natural rhythm of productivity. Mental framing enhances the effectiveness of energy management. Viewing energy as a controllable resource rather than a passive state shifts the mindset from reactive to proactive. Tasks no longer wait for a surge of inspiration because energy is intentionally cultivated through deliberate behaviors. This reframing creates empowerment and self-efficacy, reducing procrastination and enhancing confidence in immediate execution. By controlling energy, the brain perceives opportunity as actionable, resistance as manageable, and initiation as effortless. Incorporating energy optimization into daily routines amplifies the impact exponentially. Morning rituals that include hydration, light exercise, and focused breathing establish an energetic baseline for the day. Strategic work intervals aligned with circadian peaks maximize output. Midday energy resets through movement or short walks prevent afternoon slumps. Eating routines that promote restorative sleep ensure energy replenishment for the following day. These deliberate interventions create a cycle of sustained energy availability, ensuring that action is possible and consistent regardless of fleeting motivation. Ultimately, relying solely on motivation is unreliable because it is external, fleeting, and often unpredictable. Energy, however, is a resource that can be managed, cultivated, and optimized. By understanding energy cycles, implementing physical and mental hacks, and structuring tasks around peak states, immediate action becomes inevitable. Energy over motivation transforms productivity from a matter of chance into a system of deliberate execution. The combination of awareness, intervention, and reinforcement ensures that tasks are completed promptly, consistently, and efficiently. Mastery of energy is mastery of action, providing a foundation for unstoppable progress, personal growth, and sustained achievement, proving that action is not born from inspiration. It is generated by the intentional cultivation of available energy. Chapter 10. Consistency compounds success. Success is rarely the result of a single heroic effort. It is the outcome of repeated, deliberate actions, small, consistent steps that compound over time into extraordinary results. Every action taken today, no matter how minor it seems, sets the stage for tomorrow's momentum. Instant action is the spark that ignites this compounding effect. When you force yourself to act immediately, the behavior reinforces neural pathways in the brain, making subsequent action easier and more automatic. This is the essence of habit formation. Repetition builds structure, and structure builds results. Consistency is not glamorous. It is patient, disciplined, and relentless, yet it wields more power than talent, motivation, or fleeting inspiration ever could. Habits are the architecture of achievement. Each decision to act reinforces a pattern, shaping behavior and expectation. When actions are taken consistently, they transition from conscious effort to automatic execution. The brain, rewarded repeatedly for completing tasks, begins to anticipate and initiate action without hesitation. For instance, committing to write for 10 minutes every day establishes a neural rhythm where starting is effortless and continuity is natural. One day, that 10 minutes might extend to 30, a paragraph becomes a chapter, and the chapter becomes a completed manuscript. The cumulative effect of repeated micro-commitments and instant action creates unstoppable momentum that grows exponentially over time. Daily routines act as the scaffolding that supports this compounding process. By designing structured practices that prioritize immediate action, productivity becomes habitual. Morning rituals, for example, can anchor the day, setting a tone of discipline and focus. Tasks such as reviewing goals, outlining priorities, or completing a single high-impact action before distractions arise ensure the mind begins in motion rather than inertia. Evening routines consolidate progress, reflecting on accomplishments, reinforcing lessons, and planning the next day. These rituals, repeated consistently, form an unbreakable cycle that cements the force yourself into action mindset into daily life. Tracking progress is critical to reinforcing consistency. Without measurement, effort can feel invisible, diminishing motivation and the sense of achievement. By recording daily actions, even minor ones, the brain recognizes patterns of completion and reinforces them through dopamine release. Visual trackers, journals, or digital tools provide tangible evidence of forward movement. Each mark on a checklist, each logged accomplishment is not just a record, it is a reward. Over time, this reinforcement strengthens the connection between action and success, creating a self-perpetuating cycle where consistency breeds confidence and results. Celebrating wins, regardless of size, amplifies the compounding effect. Recognition of progress validates effort and encourages continued action. Small achievements, when acknowledged, become milestones that reinforce the behavior required to reach larger goals. This principle applies universally, whether completing a single task, mastering a micro-skill, or making measurable progress toward a long-term objective. Celebrating reinforces the neural pathways of success. It tells the brain that action is worthwhile, cultivating a positive association with initiative and persistence. Real-life examples demonstrate the transformative power of consistency compounded over time. Consider Emma, a freelance graphic designer who struggled to secure clients despite having skill and vision. She began implementing small, consistent actions daily, reaching out to a single potential client, posting one portfolio piece, or dedicating 15 minutes to skill improvement. Each action was minor in isolation, but the repetition created visible results within weeks. Momentum built, inquiries increased, and eventually her client base expanded significantly. The compounding nature of her daily efforts created exponential growth that one-off efforts or sporadic motivation could never achieve. Emma's story illustrates that instant action today generates the habits that deliver tomorrow's breakthroughs. To apply this principle, begin with micro habits that are easy to sustain. Choose a single task that aligns with a larger goal and commit to completing it daily without exception. It could be as simple as sending an email, making a call, drafting a paragraph, or engaging in a physical exercise. Consistency matters more than intensity. Even minimal, repeated action compounds over time. Once the habit is established, gradually expand the scope, allowing small wins to build momentum toward more ambitious objectives. The cumulative effect of these daily actions produces exponential growth in capability, confidence, and achievement. Consistency also strengthens resilience. By establishing a pattern of immediate action, individuals become less dependent on fluctuating motivation, willpower, or external circumstances. Habits created through repetition form an internal infrastructure of discipline that persists even under stress or uncertainty. The brain, conditioned to act without deliberation, reduces hesitation and resistance. Challenges no longer derail progress because the default response becomes action rather than avoidance. This resilience multiplies the impact of effort, ensuring that temporary setbacks do not interrupt long-term growth. A practical exercise to cement this mindset involves a daily accountability log. At the end of each day, record every action taken toward your goals, no matter how small. Include one reflection on what worked, what could improve, and a short note of recognition for progress achieved. This simple practice combines tracking, reflection, and celebration, reinforcing the habit of daily action. Over time, the accumulation of logged actions provides a visible and powerful testament to consistent effort, creating motivation through evidence rather than emotion. Another key to leveraging consistency is the deliberate alignment of habits with core values and long-term objectives. Each repeated action should connect to a larger purpose. This alignment increases intrinsic motivation, ensuring that habits are meaningful rather than mechanical. When the brain recognizes a connection between immediate actions and broader aspirations, it strengthens commitment, increases satisfaction, and enhances the natural compounding effect of repeated behaviors. Purpose-driven consistency amplifies results and ensures that momentum is sustained over time. Energy management intersects with consistency, enhancing the capacity to execute daily routines without reliance on fluctuating motivation. By pairing habits with optimal energy states, immediate action becomes easier and consistency is maintained. Practices such as scheduling demanding tasks during peak energy periods, incorporating movement breaks, or using mental reframing ensure that each action is not only performed, but performed efficiently and effectively. When energy is aligned with habitual execution, the force of compounding is magnified, producing greater results in less time. The cumulative power of consistent instant action creates a compounding effect that is difficult to overstate. Each completed task adds to the foundation for the next, gradually transforming potential into measurable progress. The brain, reinforced by repeated success, begins to operate in a state of readiness, automatically initiating action and sustaining momentum. Habits become the vehicle for achievement, and daily routines become the engine driving consistent forward motion. Small, deliberate steps, repeated without exception, produce results that grow exponentially, demonstrating that true power lies not in isolated bursts of effort, but in the disciplined repetition of action over time. By combining instant initiation, deliberate routines, progress tracking, and recognition of small wins, individuals develop an internal system that enforces action, strengthens discipline, and compounds success. The interplay of habit formation, momentum, and reinforcement creates a cycle where execution becomes effortless, confidence rises, and goals that once seemed distant become achievable. Consistency is the bridge between intention and achievement, transforming fleeting motivation into lasting results, and turning today's actions into tomorrow's unstoppable momentum.